Welcome back to your favorite place on the internet. Welcome back to In-Depth Literature. Just want to give a shout out to all the new viewers, commenters, and subscribers. Who would have thought that my bookshelf tour collection video would do as well as it did? Apparently everybody likes my channel now, and we are still getting a lot of views from previous videos as well. So it's always good to have some new people as well as some people that have been here a while. So without further ado, today we are going to be covering The Good Child's River by Thomas Wolfe. Been trying to get to some more Thomas Wolfe content. Posthumously published novel. Recently, this book was published 50 some odd years after Thomas Wolfe's death. So it's really good to finally have The Good Child's River. Thomas Wolfe scholar by the name of Susan Stutman kind of packaged it, edited it, and sort of, repackaged it for the larger reading public. And A Good Child's River is not only interesting because it's sort of like a lost, a found Thomas Wolfe novel, lost and found Thomas Wolfe novel, posthumously published, but also A Good Child's River actually does not feature Thomas Wolfe's alter ego main protagonist, Eugene Gant / George Weber, and actually it features the young life of Aline Bernstein, aka Esther Jack is her fictional name. And basically, The Good Child's River is Esther Jack's upbringing in New York City in the early 1900s. And so, although we do not have the sort of main featured protagonist of the autobiographical aspect of Thomas Wolfe, we still have a lot of Wolfian themes in The Good Child's River. I keep calling it A Good Child. It's The Good Child's River. So we have a lot of Wolfian themes. We cannot escape that in the universe of Thomas Wolfe. We are well aware that the writing of this novel is Thomas Wolfe, yet the critics that claim that Thomas Wolfe could only write about himself, that he was sort of this egocentric, limited writer, whether or not you believe that, I myself am not from that camp, because there's so many wonderful characters in the universe of Thomas Wolfe, regardless that they're centered around Eugene Gant or George Weber. He's definitely not the first author to sort of have an egocentric fictional universe. So I never thought that he was a limited writer or an egocentric writer, but that's just kind of what a lot of the critics said. Hell, even Harold Bloom said that he could only write about himself and that he was the eternal adolescent, yada, yada, yada. I don't really care too much for Harold Bloom. I know we probably got some Harold Bloom scholars out there. To me, Harold Bloom just kind of talks a lot, but doesn't really say anything. Now, The Good Child's River documents Aline Bernstein / Esther Jack's upbringing in New York City among the very eclectic, very fascinating theater world that she would later become a set designer and stage costume designer for. And there's a few central characters that we'll discuss and sort of the culture surrounding The Good Child's River. But just a little background that the Good Child's River was begun roughly in the late 1920s to 1930s. It was originally planned, allegedly from what I've read, to be published in the epic grandiose October Fair, which was like this huge 4-part novel or 4-part series that Thomas Wolfe was originally working on that sort of got cut down to Of Time in the River and You Can't Go Home Again, as well as The Web and the Rock. The final two, the ones I just mentioned, also published posthumously. And that's what's also sort of frustrating about Thomas Wolfe, is that although he published two, huge novels, that being Look Homeward Angel, as well as Of Time in the River, and some, quite a few short stories, maybe a novella or two. The second bulk of Thomas Wolfe writing, unfortunately, was not published till after the man was dead. So that's kind of what we're left with. But The Good Child's River is a beautiful exploration of Thomas Wolfe exploring the early life of his mistress, Aline Bernstein. Now, Aline Bernstein / Esther Jack, Thomas Wolfe scholars are probably familiar with Aline Bernstein. She was the woman that Thomas Wolfe had an affair with, and she sort of nurtured and sort of provided a financial cushion for Thomas Wolfe to be able to write. If there was not a Aline Bernstein, there probably would have never been a Thomas Wolfe. I would like to think that regardless of Aline Bernstein, we would have still had Thomas Wolfe. But just generally speaking, she provided a huge nurturing aspect to not only his writing, but also his life. They were lovers, very tumultuously passionate lovers, I might add. And over the course of time, Thomas Wolfe and Aline Bernstein, started to exchange a lot of letters and obviously in-person conversations where they would sort of pick each other's brain. And Aline Bernstein, sort of through Thomas Wolfe, was able to explore her early upbringing and sort of come to terms with maybe the somewhat complicated relationship that she had with her father as well as her mother. So the four main characters that are sort of explored in, sort of the narration of Good Child's River is sort of split between the young adolescent / teenage Esther Jack and also her father, who his fictional name is Joe Barrett, as well as Esther Jack's mother, who is called Rebecca, and Rebecca's sister, that being Esther Jack's aunt, whose name is Bella. And all of these characters obviously have some narration time. We see sort of this old theatrical New York, this post-industrial revolution New York City through the eyes of all these wonderful characters. But first and foremost, the universe of A Good Child's River is narrated by Esther Jack, and sort of the way she not only reacts to the theatrical culture, the thespian culture that she grows up in, inspired by her father, but also sort of just the family culture in general for Esther Jack, which is kind of complicated, but in sort of a profound, magical way, I would say, because there's sort of this wanderlust that sort of goes throughout the narrative of A Good Child's River, and that wanderlust is not only sort of familiar to us by way of Thomas Wolfe's natural sort of themes, sort of the Wolfian themes that we discussed that will pop up, but also Esther Jack's father, Joe Barrett, sort of by default of his trade as an actor, as a thespian, living in New York, and he also worked for the circus, I believe, or maybe that was his uncle, I can't remember, but there's this overall beautiful exploration of wanderlust and sort of these actors, kind of coming and going all the time and setting up these productions, tearing down, having to travel to the next city, sort of setting up the carnival, taking down, and there's this beautiful exploration of not only wanderlust, but also just what it's like to be an actor. And we sort of get sort of obviously Aline Bernstein went on to work for the theater guilds of New York City, and she was a very prominent woman in the culture of New York, early 1900s New York theater culture and play productions, actors. So we sort of get, Thomas Wolfe beautifully illustrates and puts all that into context. Where did she get the inspiration from? How did her father nurture this? What were her father's thoughts on acting? What were her mother's, what was the mother's place in sort of this complicated family where the father had sort of this sort of creative wanderlust? And I think although we do have some great characters that Thomas Wolfe creates for us, we're never sort of unaware, right, that these characters are written and sort of created by Thomas Wolfe. And obviously with Thomas Wolfe, we get a lot of existential themes of life and time and the briefness of our days, to quote the master himself, as well as time and the universe and just the limited amount of time that we have here in this life to sort of live a creative, fruitful, and productive, loving life, and sort of finding that craft that is meaningful to you as an artist or as a family member or just a person in general. So not only do we have this, fruitful exploration of the creative endeavor, sort of the thespian acting culture that Aline Bernstein was sort of exposed to by her father, we also have the aspect of Aline Bernstein's Jewish identity and how she relates to that, how the larger culture of New York City at the time related to her. And what we also get with Thomas Wolfe is this really great exploration of how New York City was not just, the result of one culture. We have Italians, we have Germans, we have Polish people, we have Jews and blacks and the Irish immigrants, and how they're all sort of contributing culturally and sort of socio-politically, creatively speaking, to sort of create this universe that Esther Jack sort of grows up in. And going back to sort of the topic of Jewish identity that pops up with Esther Jack and A Good Child's River, we have sort of this exploration of, through the lens of Esther Jack's aunt, Bella, this sort of frustration and this anxiety about not only Jewish identity and sort of this not this fear of being Jewish, but this this sort of almost self-hatred that Thomas Wolfe explores. And Thomas Wolfe was not afraid to sort of go there with some of the Jewish characters and sort of the way that they were taught to sort of view themselves, and Esther Jack's aunt is highly critical of the Jewish culture, and it's almost this suffocating through the eyes of Bella, Esther Jack's aunt anyway. Her perspective of the Jewish culture is that it's sort of too conservative and too tight knit and too suffocating and too restrictive. And this character, that being Esther Jack's aunt, Bella, wants to kind of rebel. And not only is she frustrated with sort of growing up in this sort of restrictive, one-dimensional Jewish society, or so she believes it to be. And Aunt Bella and her sister Rebecca, that being Esther Jack's mother, sort of have these back and forth sort of debates on the place of a woman. What is a woman's role in society? What is a woman's role in marriage? And how to break out of the feminine confines and perhaps the Jewish confines that this woman, Esther Jack's aunt, finds herself in. Now, there has been some speculation that some of the maybe quote-unquote prejudice that comes up against Jews and some of the other cultures in A Good Child's River was sort of filtered through Thomas Wolfe's worldview. But I think there's a reason that Thomas Wolfe wanted to explore these themes, not only to sort of face his own sort of cultural prejudices or his cultural frustrations, but also just to give a voice to these characters, to sort of show that they weren't just one-dimensional and that they didn't have everything figured out socially or politically, or in the context of race. Esther Jack's family is very wealthy. They have black servants that sort of help them. But in turn, so Thomas Wolfe has always sort of been critiqued or criticized through the lens of sort of the racial, socio-political topics that come up. But that's only really one way to read the work of Thomas Wolfe. I think if you can kind of, I don't want to say sympathize or give Thomas Wolfe a free pass, but sort of view Thomas Wolfe's rhetoric in terms of the time period that he lived and grew up in, the old Southern culture, that's sort of just a byproduct of the overall Thomas Wolfe universe. But apart from that, The Good Child's River is just a beautiful character exploration of the young Esther Jack. And what's interesting about the character of Esther Jack / Aline Bernstein is that the majority of Thomas Wolfe readers, unless you kind of know about this, you only know Esther Jack through the lens of her affair with George Weber or Eugene Gant that occurs in the later sort of sequences of the Thomas Wolfe novel universe. But this is a full, in-depth exploration, as much as Thomas Wolfe was capable of, through letters and through probing Aline Bernstein's psyche. And it's sort of frustrating because we don't know exactly what his plans were for the Good Child's River. Perhaps he was going to further develop it. Perhaps he would have went back and edited it and revised it. Perhaps he would have included it in the October Fair, or maybe You Can't Go Home Again, or maybe he would have put it in some other novel, kind of like he did sort of the early folklore sketches that he did for The Hills Beyond. Actually, I have a good copy of Hills Beyond here. So I think this is kind of the equivalent of what he did. He sort of wrote The Hills Beyond about sort of the Pentland, sort of the Gant and / Pentland family history, but he also was sort of doing that with Esther Jack and Aline Bernstein and her upbringing. So sort of in a nutshell, we do have some beautiful themes that come up here. And, we talked about the frustration with being a female, and this character Bella is not afraid to sort of come to terms with her the more sensual parts of her personality, the more psychosexual parts, and says how frustrating being a woman is, that they can't, make a move on men the same way that men are allowed and sort of accepted to sort of make a move on them. And there's just these overall beautiful passages, descriptions of food, descriptions of Jewish food, descriptions of Irish food, and also sort of going back a little bit to Esther Jack's father, Joe Barrett. We sort of, through his lens, as well as the lens of the thespian community, as well as through the eyes of Esther Jack, the theater in general is sort of perceived as this almost mystical, spiritual place where you can find any dream, where any dream is attainable, where you go to the carnival and you smell the smells and you see the animals and you see the acrobats, and that's sort of the same sort of idea for the stage. They spend hours setting up and sort of creating this fictional universe It's not unlike writing itself, and Thomas Wolfe sort of illustrates for us sort of this metaphor for the stage as this heightened sort of experience where you can achieve your dreams and sort of escape from reality. And it reminds me quite a bit of how my mother described sort of just what it was like to be a thespian, what it was like to be an actor, and how brilliantly Thomas Wolfe was able to do that is just really great. And we have this relationship with Esther Jack's grandfather, whom she loves, and just some beautiful descriptions here. It says, "My grandfather died 4 years later. The manner of his death was so horrible that it cast a shadow over my father's entire youth." And just it says here, my grandfather was literally cut to pieces. Year by year, he endured a series of terrible amputations on the stump of his leg. I think he was like a war veteran or something. And so just it's just wonderful that Thomas Wolfe took some time away from the Eugene Gant / George Weber universe to explore the universe in the life and the background of Esther Jack. And we have this almost disturbing descriptions we have this not only nature and time, but Thomas Wolfe talks about how sort of this not uncommonly that comes up in Thomas Wolfe mythology over and over again is this omnipresent theme of the ebb and flow of the river and how it sort of functions as this vehicle that sort of pushes and pulls us through time, through universal time, and sort of makes us aware of our own immortality. And Thomas Wolfe talks about this omnipresent sort of creature, or this omnipresent energy that gropes with its feelers, and sort of like this sort of succulent energy that sleeps and is alive during the day, but then flows with the river at night, and sort of universal energy that we all sort of are a part of, kind of grasps and sucks with its feelers. And it's just very disturbing and just very bizarre. Let me find that quote here. "We grope with our feelers in the sea's dark bed among the polyed squirms, blind sucks and crawls and sea valves of the brain, call through the slopes and glades of night's dark water on great fish." My annotation at the bottom says "so bizarre," because it's so viscerally bizarre the way Thomas Wolfe explores these themes of sleeping and the river, and how we're all part of the universally aware in a very much alive river, but that at night we all sort of go to this place where we fall asleep and we're vulnerable, but sort of some part of our existence is kind of groping with its feelers to try to sort of break the barriers of existence. And just these beautiful descriptions of that we see time and time again through Wolfe's universe, time and destiny and the briefness of our days. So I hope you guys, I hope I've inspired everybody to read The Good Child's River. And it sort of ends abruptly, unfortunately, because, Thomas Wolfe, we didn't live to sort of finalize and approve the final version of A Good Child's River. But it pretty much, in my opinion, dispels any rumors that Thomas Wolfe was in some way limited, or that Thomas Wolfe was unable to write about other characters, that he was unable to invent other characters. And obviously you will get the exploration of the fascinating, up and coming post, Industrial Revolution New York City and the thespian scene, and how Esther Jack was inspired to follow her pursuit, to become a stage and set designer. If I didn't mention before that, unlike sort of the later versions of Esther Jack that's filtered through her affair with Eugene Gant or George Weber, that being Thomas Wolfe, this is a much richer, more sort of unbiased, sort of more less opinionated, more innocent version of Esther Jack's life and legacy. So thank you so much for watching this video. We do have some really great content planned for you guys over the course of the next couple of weeks. So thank you so much for watching. Make sure you guys hit that like button. Follow me on Instagram at Andrew Marlowe Artist Official, and check out the playlists and some of the previous uploads. And we'll see you all next time.